Shalom and greetings in the name of Yahwah, the only name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. For this reason, I pledge allegiance to Yahwah Almighty, who has blessed the constitutional republic of the United States, and to that republic for which those gorgeous red, white, and blue stars and stripes stand, one nation, under our only one God Yahwah, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Which brings me once again to Psalm 33 and 12. And this is very important. It says from the Complete Jewish Bible, "How blessed is the nation whose God is Yahwah, the people he chose as his heritage." Now we know that this is talking about Israel because Yahweh chose Israel as his heritage. But think about this. This could be any nation whose God is Yahweh. Now I want you to think about something. Well, first of all, I need to establish the fact that I mean no disrespect to my flag or to my nation. My flag is a piece of cloth that represents a nation that has been very powerful over the many years and has been a blessing to Israel, especially during the Trump administrations. I'd like to also say that it's the Almighty who has given us breath to be able to live in such a powerful nation. However, let me toss something your way. This nation, or any other nation, was never given the promise that I just read to you out of Psalm 33 and 12. Again, how blessed is the nation whose God is Yahweh. Let me stop there. This could be any nation, but if you continue reading, it specifies the people he chose to be his heritage. This was Israel. That little bitty teeny tiny nation over there who was given the word of the living God first. And he wasn't just any God. And he was not a God called by just any name. He has many attributes, of course, but he has only one name. Now, for you that might want to condemn women teaching, this is for women. This is a women's program. Let me be specific, because I know my place. However, please know that Yahweh did use Deborah to be a judge over men and women during the time of the judges. However, this program is specifically for women. For you keepers at home, that word keep means to guard. So back to what I was saying here. Blessed is the nation whose God is Yahweh. Now, many nations claim to worship different deities. But Yahweh chose only one nation as his heritage, and that was Israel. Sometimes I wonder, is this the root of the problem with the descendants of Esau? And is this the problem with those people? Is this the problem with others over in the Middle East? Because their father was Abraham. Is this the problem with that's really going on over there? Now you think about it. Or is it because of the way Yahweh chose things? He chose Israel to go in and take a specific piece of land. He gave the borders. He marked out the borders that they should take and drive out the inhabitants. And he said, I'm not bringing you to this land because of your righteousness. I'm bringing you to this land because the people there are so wicked. They were wicked. And some of the tribes drove them out in the land that was allotted to be theirs. But some of the tribes did not. Could this be another reason why? I don't know. But I do know that there are good and evil people everywhere. And we cannot blanket an entire group of people because of one single death cult regime. Now, those of you who are prophetically minded, you know that this world is eventually going to be under a one world rule by a son of perdition. And there are going to be many, many evil things take place throughout the world. In fact, at the breaking of a 7-year treaty in the middle of the week, in the middle of the 7 years, that treaty will be broken, and there will be tribulation such as the world has never known. We also know that there's going to be a time of peace and safety just before that. So, I have a lot of things up in the air in my mind, in my spirit, about what's to be. And I share this with you women. And I share the fact that Israel is Yahweh's choice. Again, there are good people and evil people in every nation. And we see the examples of what happened with Israelis during the 12 tribes throughout the scriptures. They took on idolatry. They took on other names of deities that they should not have. We know that Solomon he took so many wives, and he would offer up sacrifices to his wives' idols. And this was an abomination to Yahweh. Yet he still let Solomon stay upon the throne. Why? Because Yahweh made a promise to David that there will always be one of your seed to sit upon the throne. And if they got too wicked and such a stench in Yahweh's nostrils, they were removed, and somebody else rose up. But again, whoever rose up had a choice, as we all do. We have all been given free will to choose. Yahweh Almighty does not want robot service. So, we pledge allegiance to the one who gave us breath. No matter what anybody would think, no matter what anybody would say. And of course we know that other people have their choices as well. Yet, if their choices are evil, they are to be corrected. And they might not take correction so very well at all. And accuse you of being judgmental and all kinds of craziness and trying to force something down their throat, and you're not. You're just saying, hey, the word teaches for a woman not to wear that which pertains to a man. Women never wore pants until Amelia Bloomer came on the scene in the late 1800s and cut off her long dress to her knees and showed her bloomers, her undergarment. That's where the term bloomer comes, was from Amelia Bloomer. And at that time, every godly living man rebuked her, as well as the New York Times newspaper. So the years rocked on and women became more rebellious. And they took on public jobs instead of being a keeper at home. And then what happened to the family life? Let me clue you in on something, Mom. That word mom, mother, Emma, in Hebrew, or em, goes back to a root word. And it refers about a substance that came from the skins of animals that they made a glue. And in other words, em, or Emma, was the mother, that glue that held the family together. She is also called the keeper of her home. That doesn't just mean cook and clean either. That doesn't mean you line up and shut up and get under subjection to your husband, which you are supposed to submit to your husband. And he is supposed to love you as Mashiach loved the assembly, or as Yahweh Almighty loves us. And there's just not a whole lot of men that does that from what I can see. But is it because women have gotten out of their place and they've become more masculine than feminine, out of their place? And they are no longer the keeper at home. They've got wandering eyes, and they are distracted by the cares of this life instead of concentrating on teaching their children and training their children up in the way that they should go, so that when they're old, they won't depart from the way. Instead, mom finds the easy way out. It seems to be easier for women to take a job outside of the home than to rear your children in the fear and the admonition of Yahweh Almighty. Teach them how to pray. Teach them that they have only one God with one name, not many gods with many names. Women have fallen out of their place in many directions. Yes, women are supposed to be submissive to their husbands, and your husband should get the last say-so in his house, as he is the head of the household. And if there's a lot of disrespect with your husband, I'm sorry. You got to watch that. Because if your husband's not doing right, and he's even doing evil, you must keep you right if he never gets right. Because you are going to have to answer to Yahweh for your own soul, for your own heart, before the Almighty. You're going to have to answer to him. Just because he does wickedly doesn't mean that you do wicked back to him. And you have the right to leave him. If you feel like you need to leave someone who is brutally treating you, you have a right to leave him. But you have to remain in that condition, otherwise be reconciled with your husband. Now, love and trust go hand in hand, and I get it. Nevertheless, there is a way that women ought to behave themselves. And your husband should get the last word, right or wrong. And if he's wrong, you can take your petition before Yahweh Almighty. And if you're really living something according to his word, Yahweh is going to deal with that man. And you may not see it right off the bat. But if you're living it before your husband, and you keep a respect and not a smart mouth before him, the word says, the writing says, it's not the word, it's the writing. It says that the husbands can be won by the chaste conversation of their wife. Now, I knew of a couple, and they were both very, strict living. And the husband didn't know how to love his wife. He was never taught. And the woman, she just thought she knew some things, but she really didn't. You know how people can be young and dumb in your younger marriage life? They weren't taught right. Men sometimes are not taught how to love their wives. They're not taught. Maybe they've come out of a family home where the husband didn't know how to love his wife. And then maybe they received a salvation and experience in the Holy Spirit, and they went and sat under some kind of teacher, preacher, rabbinical somebody or whoever that did not teach them how to love their wife. The man was supposed to be the strong one. Maybe your husband is not the strong one and you feel like you are. Maybe you've not let him. Maybe you've not allowed him to be because you've been out of your place for so long. Look, everybody has a different story. So I don't know whose story is what because I'm not in a situation. But I know it takes two to make a marriage. And it takes submission to the word by both parties. And if your husband is not submitted to the word, you still must submit to the word. So you can be right before the Holy One of Israel. And you need to teach your children the same thing. To be respectful with their daddy. Because if they see you with diarrhea of the mouth, they're going to do the same thing. So, what does the word say about controlling your spirit? I don't know how in the world I got off on this. I was going to read Psalm 91. But if you have diarrhea of the mouth in front of your children, you are setting a horrible example. And the first thing that I believe I would do, and you recognize you're wrong, you say, well, he did this and he did that. Yeah, he might have. But you say you're the one that's got a relationship with the Almighty? Have you learned to control or bite your spirit? That you won't have what's called dung tongue or potty mouth? Do you need a whole roll of toilet tissue to wipe your mouth? And your husband does not see any kind of chaste conversation, which that word conversation is not necessarily what comes out of your mouth. It's your lifestyle. It's your whole lifestyle. It's your demeanor before him. And I have watched over the years, in my young and dumb years, the Holy One of Israel made sure that I got plenty of practice. In our young and dumb years, we always do stuff, okay? But we learn, and he makes sure we get lots of practice. Practice in making our flesh do the right thing, whether your husband does the right thing or not. But if you do the right thing and take your petitions before Yahweh, Yahweh knows how to deal with that man. And he may not admit it right off the bat. Sometimes I wonder if that's a pride thing. And it's a pride thing in women too. It should never be a pride thing to humble yourself and say, I'm sorry. I should never have spoken to you in that kind of voice. And I want you to forgive me. And if you've done it in front of your children, you need to go straight to your children and apologize for your froward mouth. You know, the word says in the KJV reads a froward mouth. That means a smart mouth. Calls for strokes. So if you have a smart mouth, you might be asking for it. You might be asking for something. But the word says in another place, a soft answer turns away wrath. And if you don't have any soft answers, the best thing to do is don't say anything. Close your mouth and ask Yahweh to bridle your tongue. Wow, somebody must need this, because I sure wasn't getting in this. I wanted to read Psalm 91, and I think I'm going to go there now. You know, I told someone not too long ago, and I've said this a couple times before to others. To me, the Proverbs teach, and the Psalms comfort. Tehillim. They comfort us. And I want to read some in Psalm, and I hope it'll be a blessing to you. And I'll be reading from a complete Jewish Bible. And everywhere I see that word Adonai written in all uppercase letters, this is where the name of Yahweh has been removed. And if you have your KJV, because I pretty much stopped using that except for people to explain things to them. If you have a KJV, you'll see an uppercase LORD. And when you see that uppercase LORD, that's where the name of Yahweh has been removed in the KJV. Okay, so let's read in Psalm Tehillim, chapter 91, starting with verse 1. These are beautiful verses. It says, you who live in the shelter of Elyon, who spend your nights in the shadow of Shaddai. Now this Elyon is the Most High. And Shaddai is the Almighty. So I'm reading the terminology that they have in this complete Jewish Bible. And it goes on to say, who say to, it says uppercase Adonai, and you who say to Yahweh, my refuge, my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Do you notice that this uppercase Adonai that's written in Psalm 91 and 2, it was the name of Yahweh. Yahweh is your refuge. Yahweh is your fortress. He is your God in whom you will trust. It does not use a Shua name, and it does not use a J name. By the way, the J name is Latin Greek, and no woman from the tribe of Yehudah is going to name her child a Latin Greek name. Next verse. He will rescue you from the trap of the hunter and from the plague of calamities. Talking about Yahweh. He will cover you with his pinions, those are feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His truth is a shield and protection. Talking about Yahweh now. You will not fear the terrors of night, or the arrow that flies by day, or the plague that roams in the dark, or the scourge that wreaks havoc at noon. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it won't come near you. Now, these are people who trust in Yahweh. This is what these verses are talking about. Verse 8. Only keep your eyes open, and you will see how the wicked are punished. The wicked. The wicked? This word wicked, it goes back to the word criminal. The wicked. They're criminals. They're wicked. They're guilty. Guilty of what? Breaking the law. Breaking Yahweh's law. For you have made Yahweh the Most High, who is my refuge, your dwelling place. Do you do that, ladies? You may not know this. You may not know that you should have been making Yahweh the Most High your dwelling place. I'm reading from the book of Psalm, Tehillim. And these books were all written before the perverted New Testament that you now have. Now, the New Testament is a compilation of letters, of epistles that were encouraging the believers to stay within the boundaries of Yahweh's Word. That's all they were. They were meant to keep people within the boundaries of His Word. But you find Roman Trinitarian terminology all through it. Okay, I'm getting off here. Let's go back to Psalm 91 and 10. No disaster will happen to you. No calamity will come near your tent. For He will order His angels to care for you and guard you wherever you go. They will carry you in their hands so that you won't trip on a stone. You will tread down lions and snakes, young lions and serpents. You will trample underfoot. Look what happened to King David when he was a lad, tending sheep. He killed a lion and a bear, didn't he? And look what he did with a giant. He learned how to use a slingshot. And Yahweh blessed him to take that terror that terrorized Israel, took him down. He's just a lad. But he was committed in his heart to Yahweh. He was committed in his spirit. He committed his ways unto Yahweh. Next verse. Because He loves me, I will rescue Him. Because He knows my name, I will protect Him. What's His name? It's not Jay, and it's not Shua, and it's not any other name. Because He knows my name, Yahweh, I will protect Him. Now we know Jeremiah knew who Yahweh was. And Yahweh told Jeremiah, He said, they're going to come against you, but they will not prevail against you. But look what all happened to him. He was arrested. He was thrown in a pit, a dung pit probably, the cistern, the city cistern. But they did not prevail over him. And of all those, he was made free. Because even though he was persecuted by people, he stayed with what Yahweh told him what to do. And he didn't diverse from it. He will call on me and I will answer him. This is Psalm 91 and 15. I will be with him when he is in trouble. I will extricate him and bring him honor. This is Yahweh speaking. I will satisfy him with long life and show him my salvation. This was the Psalm of David. Let's go to Psalm 92. This is a song for Shabbat, it says. A song for Shabbat. It is good to give thanks to Yahweh and sing praises to your name, Elyon. Do you hear that? Let's read that again. It is good to give thanks to Yahweh and sing praises to your name. Sounds like they're articulating His name here. And I understand that there's a ruling that a group of people, they do not say His name because they feel like they're taking His name in vain, but not when you're exalting and exhorting. If you're calling out, if you're crying out to Him, if we declare His name, if we speak His name, say His name, these are articulation words. What makes it wrong is when you take it wrongfully and you use it idly. You just use it idly and you're not exhorting or exalting it. You're just speaking it idly. We don't want to do that. That's where it's wrong. So it is good to give thanks to Yahweh and sing praises to your name, to tell in the morning about your grace and at night about your faithfulness, to the music of 10-stringed harp and a lute and the melody sounding on a lyre. For Yahweh, what you do makes me happy. I take joy in what your hands have made. How great are your deeds, Yahweh. How very deep your thoughts. Do you hear this? He is speaking a prayer directly to Yahweh, calling him by his name. Calling our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, by his name. How great are your deeds, Yahweh. How very deep are your thoughts. Stupid people can't know. Fools don't understand. This is what the next verse says. This is Psalm 92:7. Stupid people can't know. Fools don't understand. Your KJV reads a brutish man. That sounds a little bit nicer, doesn't it? A brutish man. Brutish means stupid, by the way. Stupid people can't know. Fools don't understand. They don't understand what? How great are your deeds, Yahweh? How very deep are your thoughts? Stupid people can't know. Fools don't understand. That when the wicked sprout like grass and all who do evil prosper, it is so that they can be eternally destroyed. Do you hear that? All those that are wicked, that deliberately and willfully love destroying people, either with their tongue or with weapons that do it. Now, I'm not talking about defending yourself. Israel's not started a war. They did a preemptive strike because they knew that Iran was going to explode them off the map with their nuclear weapons. So Israel had to stop the nuclear weapons. So back here, going back to Psalm 92:8, that when the wicked sprout like grass, there's not wicked just in the Middle East. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. The wicked are everywhere. Anybody who comes against the word of Yahweh, you're probably considered wicked. Let's see what this word wicked, it goes back to again Rasha, which is a criminal, a guilty one guilty of crime. That's what it says. Wicked or guilty of sin. It's got a root word too. Let's see what this root word says. All right, this root word just is the word Rasha, with the accent on a different syllable, and it just repeats itself to be wicked, act wickedly, to be guilty, condemned. It just goes on and on. So, when the wicked sprout like grass, and all who do evil prosper, is so that they can be eternally destroyed, while you, Yahweh, are exalted forever. The wicked are going to be destroyed eternally, but Yahweh is going to be exalted forever. For your enemies, Yahweh, look, he calls the wicked his enemies. Why? Because they don't believe his word. They don't live it. They don't believe his word. For your enemies, Yahweh, your enemies will perish. All evildoers will be scattered. But you have given me the strength of a wild bull. You anoint me with fresh olive oil. My eyes have gazed with pleasure on my enemy's ruin. My ears have delighted in the fall of my foes. The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Yahweh, they will flourish in the courtyards of our God. You hear that? If we're planted in the house of Yahweh, we're going to flourish in his courtyards, his way, not our way. I see so many women, I'm this and I haven't experienced it, but they don't, they make Yahweh fit the way they choose to live, not the way Yahweh chooses for them to live. They want to do things their way instead of Yahweh's way for them. That's called rebellion. Look, that word sorcery is witchcraft. And if you look at the pharmakeia, pharmaceutical It's all sorcery. It's all witchcraft. Until next time, shalom.